This is the Conservative American Message, hosted by yours truly, the one, the only, Cam Lau. Before I get into today's episode, I have to ask one small favor. Please go ahead and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen and share the show with your friends. It really helps us grow the show. We've had to turn down multiple sponsors that just don't align with our values, so I'm totally relying on you guys to help us grow this thing. Thank you for your continued support. Well, for those that don't know, you want to start off and just kind of explain what the Iowa Standard is?
Yeah, you bet. So the Iowa Standard, it's a political news website done from a conservative point of view. I started it in November of 2018, really just to try and educate people on what's going on politically, especially at the state level, local levels, and do so in a way that really tells stories that maybe the quote-unquote mainstream media would rather ignore, or they certainly wouldn't tell the story in a similar way, use similar language, things like that. The AP style book is very biased toward the left, so I try to just write, rather than AP style, common sense and common decency. That's not too tough. You kind of hear the AP style book will refer to pro-life people as anti-choice. Well, no, it's pro-life or pro-choice, if you want to call it that. I mean, it would be like me saying it's either pro-life or anti-life. And that's what they do to pro-life people all the time. And that's every newspaper, big and small, every TV station, it's pro-choice or anti-choice. And the left owns the media, the left owns the language, and we have to start fighting back against that.
Yeah, well, so how did you get to the point in your career, what you were doing before this, and to the point of starting your own news outlet?
Yeah, I actually started in sports journalism when I was 14 years old. I did a lot of high school stuff, as well as some Iowa Barnstormers, Iowa Cubs, Des Moines Buccaneers. Growing up down in Des Moines, there was obviously all kinds of opportunities to cover those teams. And as I got older, things became a little bit more important than maybe dribbling a basketball or throwing a football or, passing a puck. So as I helped a friend run for Iowa House in 2016, I realized there really isn't an outlet from the conservative point of view that does politics in Iowa. And I thought, we really need somebody to provide a voice for conservatism in the media in Iowa, and it may as well be me. I mean, what I try to do is go to the Capitol every day during the legislative session, live stream, subcommittee, committee meetings, try and actually just provide people with a look at what's actually going on where they don't have to go to me to find out what's being done. They can actually tune in to subcommittee meetings or committee meetings that I'm at, and really just let people have the full picture of what's going on without me filtering it as much as possible. And I think that's been successful. Even this week down at the Capitol in Des Moines, a Democrat State Representative Rob Johnson said he knows that he and I probably don't agree on a whole lot, but he really thanks me for what I do because it really gives the people an opportunity to stay up to date on what's happening at the state level. I think that's really important because I think that if the majority of Iowans know exactly what's going on, know exactly what bills are being talked about, they're going to make the right decision as it relates to politics. They just have to have the information in front of them.
So how do you guys fund your operations?
Yeah, we try and find people who are willing to donate. Some people just send one check a year. Some people will sign up for monthly donations. Basically, it's almost like a never-ending political campaign, and I suck at the fundraising part of it. I hate it. It's not why I do this, but it is kind of, if you want to exist, you've got to be able to raise money in order to pay for all the things that you do, the trips, the driving, the gas. It's kind of never-ending in a really weird way where, when I started this, I thought if I could just find 1,000 people that want a conservative voice in the media to give $5 a month, that'll be fine. Then it'll all be fine. I'm not there yet, but thankfully, there's advocacy groups, there's candidates who want to advertise to our audience, so that's a way to raise some money as well. It's not where it needs to be in terms of the monthly giving, but it's getting there slowly but surely. And you just kind of keep working on it. It could be better if I would focus on that a little bit, but like I said, that's just not why I do what I do.
So, what is your current relationship with like mainstream Iowa media?
Yeah. I really don't harbor any ill will toward other people in the media, because I think a lot of it is just the media in general, kind of as an institution, is set up to be biased against conservative. It just is. Again, we could go through the AP style book. We could talk a lot about it. You could look at some of the more prestigious journalism schools in America. There's a reason why the media doesn't exactly churn out a whole lot of conservative news reporters. I talk with a lot of them. Again, most of them I probably don't agree with when it comes to political issues, but I talk with a lot of them, joke around with a couple of them, and I sit next to them at these different meetings, very cordial, kind. I think it's interesting because I think they realize that I have relationships that they don't have, just because the average Iowan, the typical Iowan, is conservative, and they're not that trusting of the mainstream media. So naturally, I kind of hear more, see more than what they probably do from average Joe. And I think they recognize that. I think they do a good job at doing what they want to do, or doing what I guess they have to do in terms of how they have to do it. I just think that, again, it's almost like education. I mean, there are some really good teachers. But the education system as a whole is just set up against conservatism. I think media, especially mainstream media, is very similar.
So, I mean, I kind of think it seems like we're shifting away from those mainstream media to more alternative things like social media and podcasts. I guess, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, because I think let's just borrow some of their terms for a second. Diversity and inclusion. Don't we want diversity in our voices in the media? Shouldn't people be exposed to counter arguments? And I think that's fine. I think if we're adults, we should recognize, like, it's totally fine. Even for me, I'll publish newsletters from Democrats. That's fine. Because once again, if people have the whole package of information to go off of, I still trust the majority of Iowans to come to the right conclusion. So there's nothing wrong with giving them information and then just trusting they can sort it out. Newspapers way back when, they were just honest about their political bias, and that's why you have newspapers called the Marshalltown Times Republican, the Sioux County Democrat, such and such Independent. The publishers were just honest back then. I think it's funny when people try and say, oh, we need political news that's unbiased, and we need political reporters who are unbiased. We should just be honest about our bias, because every single one of us who gets involved in reporting politics probably reports politics because we care. And if we care, it's probably not because we're fence sitters who just can't figure out how we feel about certain issues. Like, we have opinions. Just be honest about them and let people read our thoughts, read what we write with that in mind, and then they can also make their own decisions and make their own opinions. But I think that I think President Trump won in 2024 largely because of independent media. And if independent media doesn't exist, he probably has a lot harder time becoming the 47th president of the United States.
So do you think that's a hard thing to balance, though, with, being politically aligned one way, but still, going back to the objective truth?
Yeah, I think what this is my advice to other people. What I would look for is, if somebody claims to be a liberal or a Democrat, a progressive, whatever, but they never criticize Democrats or progressive or liberals, what are they really doing this for? And I would say the same thing about Republicans and conservatives in the media. If all you do is hammer on the other side, what are you really accomplishing? So to me, like, I hold Republicans way more accountable than I ever hold Democrats, because I have this crazy idea that if somebody runs for office as a Democrat, gets elected as a Democrat, and then votes like a Democrat, that's normal. That's how that's supposed to work. But when people run as a Republican, get elected as a Republican, and then vote like a Democrat, that's where we probably have to have some harder conversations. And I don't understand people who just want to stand on the sideline and be cheerleaders for their own party when, it's kind of like, do you think Kirk Ferentz worries more about what the Iowa Hawkeyes do in spring ball or what the Iowa State Cyclones are doing in spring ball? He's obviously more worried and focused on his own team. And if we would focus and worry more about our own team, I think we would have a much stronger, much better own team than worrying about what Democrats who don't agree with us are trying to figure out. That said, I do think there's value in highlighting some of the, some of the extreme positions of the left as a Republican. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I just think, like, if you're be married to your ideology, don't be married to people that proclaim to share your ideology, because most people don't, and that's fine. The Republicans, they can disagree with the Republican Party platform from time to time. That's fine. Just give them a chance to explain it, and then let people decide, like, is that a good explanation or is that a bad explanation? Do I want to live with that from my senator or my representative, or might it be time for somebody to step up and challenge them in a primary? I just think it's really easy to teach somebody, hey, you're a Republican, so all things Democrats do are bad, or you're a Democrat, so all things Republicans do are bad. Again, going back to that Iowa State analogy, an 8-year-old can understand, our family's an Iowa Hawkeye fan. Go Hawkeyes, boo Cyclones. But we have to have a much deeper level and understanding of we have to have a much deeper level and understanding of politics than just red good, blue bad. We have to actually stand up for the things that we actually believe in. I don't know if that answers your question, but I know I took enough.
Well, yeah, and that's what I've really appreciated about you, I think, has been your willingness and calling out Republicans that just aren't living up to the party platform or even just conservative values in the first place. But, on the topic of the extreme things that we point out on the left, I think something you've been really involved in more recently has been a lot of this sexually explicit material that's available in public libraries to minors. So how did that first come about, or first come across your radar?
I mean, this goes back at least 8 years ago to the Orange City Library, where they had books like Morris Micklewhite and the Tangerine Dress that's literally in the children's, the pre-K section of the library, about a boy who really just wants to wear a dress, and you can figure it out from there. And then there's a book with two boys, it's called Two Boys Kissing, and on the cover, just like you would expect from the title, is literally two boys kissing. Now we look at that and we say, well, is that really that bad? Because now we have books like Icebreaker, books by Chloe Walsh, Icebreaker written by Hannah Grace. Both authors, Chloe Walsh and Hannah Grace, say their books are written only for an audience of 18-year-old adults or older. Yet some libraries have Icebreaker in the young adult section, which is for 12 to 17-year-olds, and Chloe Walsh books are in the young adult section for 12 to 17-year-olds. That's insane. Nobody knows a book better than the person that wrote it. So when an author says, my book is only for adults, maybe we should listen to them. It's really just a weird thing where I think 10, 20 years ago, 5% of people would all agree, yeah, we shouldn't have books that say F me like you hate me available to minors through the public library, because the public library is an extension of the government. We shouldn't have a government that provides kids with sexually explicit content. That's not controversial. 10 years ago wasn't controversial. 20 years ago wasn't controversial. 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago would never be considered controversial. But in this age of progressivism, somehow that's like a political issue. And the Democrats want to die on the hill of keeping sexually explicit material available to minors. It's crazy. I don't understand why this is a fight. Oh, let's back up. It's because the American Library Association. That's why this is a fight. Again, it's not necessarily that librarians are bad people or that they're wrong. They're just getting really bad guidance, really bad advice from the American Library Association, which is purely a Marxist organization that has a goal on, if you were to ask the American Library Association, would you rather protect kids or expand access to library materials, they would not choose protecting kids. And I think as a society, as a culture, as a government, your most basic function is protect your citizens. And unless somebody can make an argument to me that giving children material that says F me like you hate me is providing protection to kids, I'm not going to be able to go along with that. I don't understand how that's a complicated, controversial issue.
Yeah, so how have parents in these communities responded to finding out about that?
The challenge is letting the parents know what the content of the books actually are. And really, until you read the book or you see the pictures in the book or somebody reads the book out loud to you, you're not educated on the issue. You probably shouldn't even talk about it, to be honest. And I don't care if you're on the right side of it or the left side of it. If you don't know the content in the book that's being discussed, just be quiet, read the book, and now you can make a judgment. But I think what has happened is a number of people on the other side of this are rushing to judgments not knowing the content they're actually defending. Because you have a book like Identical that is about twin 9-year-old sisters, and the father sexually abuses multiple times throughout the book one of the daughters at 9 years old and then 10 years old, and it's graphically detailed. There is not a responsible adult that would defend that book being in the 12-year-old section of a library. That the government should give that book, provide access to that book, whatever word you want to use, to a child for the child to read about. That's just not something we should do. So I think once parents see the material and once they know that it exists to the level that it exists, their tune changes really fast if you needed to convince them at all. I have not met anybody, Republican, Independent, or Democrat, who once they are told or once they are read about the content from these books, they hold the position that, oh yeah, that's totally cool. The government should totally provide these materials to kids. I haven't met anybody who has that position. Now, there's activists like that, but again, they're just so married to their ideology that you're never going to convince them anything otherwise. But it's quite disturbing that you have people who will defend that and have chosen the hill that they're going to die on politically is the hill to keep the government giving children access to sexually explicit material. I can't think of a good reason anybody would do that.
Yeah, it's pretty sick to think that people are defending that once they finally know what's really happening. What actions have actually been taken? I know there's been so many different cases of this, but like broadly, are things changing? Are library boards making the necessary changes, or they're fighting it in most of the cases, or what?
No, library boards tend to not have the most courageous people involved. I think most of the time it's just people who want to be involved in their community, and they say they have a good relationship with the library director, so they say, sure, I'll help you out and I'll join the library board. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of positives to report. I can say there are some good steps being taken in at least one library that I know of, especially here locally. I can't really get into what those positive steps are, but I am happy with the progress of the Sioux Center Library in a couple regards, and I think that as time goes, they will continue to take positive steps in the right direction. Right now, they just need a little time and space to do that, and I think they're going to end up having some really positive things. We'll see if they get to the logical conclusion where you say, okay, as a government entity, we will not provide kids access to sexually explicit material. I think that should be relatively common sense. We'll see if they eventually get there, but there's definitely steps being taken going in the right direction. I'm proud of them for that, and we'll see how much further they're willing to take it. I think, honestly, this is an issue that's going to have to be dealt with at the state level, because you have, again, an organization in the American Library Association that genuinely thinks children should have access to books like Genderqueer, books like All Boys Aren't Blue, not only to the point where the American Library, and this is kind of a key point that I am going to take around the state with me. Not only does the American Library Association tolerate books like Genderqueer and All Boys Aren't Blue and Icebreaker, they actually promote them. They actually give them awards. And these are some really disturbing books. Disturbing books. I mean, really disturbing. And the fact that the American Library Association thinks they are award-winning books, and at the same time, that organization is the one that your local library board is listening to for its policies and procedures, should concern any Iowan who cares about kids.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of to jump back to, your story starting the Iowa Standard and everything, how did you start growing an audience from the beginning?
It's just a lot of hard work. And I tell people all the time, whether it's running a political campaign, whether it's trying to start a local community advocacy group, whether it's trying to start a podcast, just know it's going to take time. And really, we shouldn't want to build something that rises fast, because as fast as it rises and is built is as fast as it can come tumbling down too. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take time. It's going to take patience and dedication. I think the best thing you can do is just be who you are. And people will naturally see somebody who's real, somebody that's, thinks like them, speaks like them, votes like them, and they're going to be attracted to that and want to support that. It just takes a bunch of time. So like in my situation, I saw the most growth through covering local stories. I know in Centerville, they wanted to remove the nativity scene. This was like 5-6 years ago, around the time when I first started this. I formed good relationships with people down there, helped them out. The Pella swimming pool situation, a middle teenage female was allowed to go to the pool topless because she identified as a boy. And I covered that. That story ended up being a national story. But again, it's telling those stories from local Iowa communities that are not going to get told by the mainstream media, especially in the way we tell them. And I think people naturally want that from our side, and they're going to find it as long as we provide it to them. COVID was a big thing that allowed the Iowa Standard's audience to really grow. People were obviously looking for alternative media at the time that wasn't necessarily bought hook, line, and sinker into the official narrative of COVID. We've obviously had things happen since 2020 that mirror that, or I guess since 2016, since President Trump was first elected, whether it's, the Russia collusion hoax, whether it's some of the Hillary Clinton stuff, whether it's some of the COVID, the 2020 election. There's no shortage of quote-unquote conspiracy theories that people were looking for answers to since 2020. And really, I think just showing up consistently, giving people a place to have their voice heard. I think really that's kind of the key too, is I don't want the Iowa Standard to be what Jacob Hall thinks. I want the Iowa Standard to be a platform where people are free to express what they think, and then other adults are free to read that, maybe chime in if they want to, and then come to their own conclusions. People don't need me to tell them how to think. I'm going to basically call a spade the way that I see it, but not everybody who reads my stuff has to see it the same way. I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally okay with that. And I think we would do well as a state and as a country If more of us were like that and more of us were willing to say, hey, everybody's got the right to be wrong. Everybody here wants the right to free speech, but none of us want to allow somebody who we think is wrong to exercise that right to free speech. Just let people say what they want to say. The most dangerous situation is a situation in which people feel like they can't speak. Because when people feel like they can't speak, that's when they're going to act. And you don't want people who feel like they can't speak to resort to actions, because usually those aren't kind-hearted, warm-hearted, feel-good actions. At that point, they're pretty fed up. At that point, they want to express their anger and their frustration. And I think if we would just let people speak, a lot fewer people would get to that point with their anger and their frustration, and we'd all be better off.
So to that point, has there ever been any sort of intense or hostile backlash towards you or anyone that you work with based on controversies?
Yeah, that happens from time to time. It is what it is. It kind of comes with the territory. Ultimately, you just realize in the world that we live in, the society we live in, people are going to, if you're standing up for what you believe, and what you believe is rooted in your Christian faith as best you understand it, there's going to be pushback to that. Like, we're told that throughout the Bible. Throughout the Bible, we are told, if the world hates you, remember it first hated me. Throughout the Bible, we are told routinely, do not fear. God does not give a spirit of fear. So those things are going to happen from time to time. People are going to get really strong, really passionate. And again, I think the interesting thing is there are people on the other side that think very differently than I do, but I'm still perfectly capable of having a conversation just like this with them and letting them say what they think if they want to. And if they care enough to hear what I think, I'll share it with them. But we can also just have normal people conversations, not about politics, and life will go on. Like, you can walk into a conversation as a Republican, somebody else can walk in as a Democrat, they could walk out a Democrat still, you could walk out a Republican still. Life will go on. It will be fine. And I think we just have to get more comfortable being uncomfortable, more agreeing to just disagree than what we are now. Because again, it kind of falls in line with things Charlie Kirk said. Things get really bad when people feel like they don't have a voice, and we all lose when we stop talking to each other. So just keep the lines of communication open. At the end of the day, like, the reason I do this is because I'm trying to stand up for what I think is right. If I really believe what I'm doing is trying to stand up for what I believe is right, I want to burn as few bridges as possible in the process, because nobody's going to listen to somebody who they think is a jackwagon. I don't try to be a jackwagon. I just try to be firm but fair and pleasantly persistent. I'm not going to buck on the things I believe. Like, that's not going to happen. You're probably not going to change my mind. I'll consider your points. You're probably not going to change my mind. That's fine. All that we can ask in return is them to do the same and give us time to explain ourselves. But we don't have to hate each other. We don't have to call each other names. We don't have to despise somebody else just because they think differently than us politically. We stand up for what we believe. We don't budge. But I think there's a way to do it firmly and respectfully. And I mean, that's a challenge. It's not always the easiest thing in the world. I would love to be a little bit less, I don't want to say mature, but I think that's the best word to use here. A little bit less mature than I am today, and maybe go back to 10 years ago when I was more willing to kind of throw grenades or call names. And I don't really think I called names, but let's just say I did for the sake of argument. But what good does that do? Again, I think there's a lot of people that want me to kind of censor the speech that happens on my Facebook page. I don't have that kind of time. I can't. If somebody reaches out to me with a specific comment, I can go, I can hide it, I can delete it, I can block the person, I can do that, but I am not going to censor it on my own. I don't have that kind of time. Again, though, I also think the beautiful thing about free speech is when people are able to speak freely, they're also able to freely expose who they are and what they believe. And if somebody's making ugly comments, most normal people with a level head on their shoulders are going to see that. And even if they agree with that person in principle, they're not going to listen to them, because nobody needs to be nasty to convince somebody to agree with them.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really hard to do is to, have a civil conversation with people in today's day and age. And, that goes for both sides. It isn't just the leftists or the conservatives. Everybody struggles with that. And,
Right.
but,
And that's fine. I mean, the things we're talking about are things that really matter, things that really make a difference, things that really mean something. Like, we're not sitting here talking about the Iowa State football rivalry and whether the Hawkeyes should win or the Cyclones should win and why you're wrong for being a Cyclone fan and I'm right for being a Hawkeye fan. Like, that doesn't matter. Let's just be honest. That doesn't matter. They've played how many times in history? How has history changed because of that game? Probably hasn't. So the things we're talking about, should we allow sex changes on kids? Should we allow kids access through the government to sexually explicit content? I mean, those things have consequences. Those things actually matter in the grand scheme of things. So, yes, you're going to get people that feel strongly one way and the other to speak out about it. But the important thing is, if you're truly trying to change hearts and minds, you're probably not going to do that by being rude, calling names, and cussing. You're probably going to have to do it by sticking to the issue, sticking to the debate, and having conversations.
so what has been your favorite thing, your favorite story that you've broken since you started this?
There's a couple of them. I think one of them is the flight of illegal immigrant children from Southern California to the Des Moines airport. Then they all got on 4 different buses and they were dispersed across the Midwest. Nobody really knows where those kids ended up. The reason that's one of my favorites is because initially everybody denied it happened. The governor's office didn't know about it. Chuck Grassley's office didn't know about it. And then a month or two later, oh yeah, this actually happened. Yeah, I literally went through the legwork of finding surveillance video from the Des Moines International Airport of the plane on the ground that showed the kids getting off the plane and boarding these buses. I got the contract through the charter plane company that showed, which federal organizations were involved. It was kind of one of those stories that actually required some legwork as a journalist. So that was fun to highlight. Wasn't really fun in the sense that I feel like some of these kids are probably kids who are part of the hundreds of thousands of children from the border that the Biden administration just lost. Hopefully that's not the case, but it's possible. The Pella Pool situation, I think legislatively, the fact that we got gender identity protections pulled out of the Iowa Civil Rights Code, that was something a few years ago that a Republican in the Iowa House told me would never work, would never happen. But we worked hard. I went around the state, spoke to groups about why that needed to be done. Obviously, I wrote story after story about males showering in the female locker room at the Forest City YMCA, about the Pella Pool situation, Sioux Center Pool situation, school students using the opposite sex bathrooms, and how that makes other people feel. I just feel like that really makes a difference in terms of protecting actual protections based on actual sex and actual gender. Because I think it's impossible to provide civil rights protection based on sex while simultaneously providing civil rights protections based on gender identity, which obviously cancels out your sex. So that was really important. There's another story that I did about Broadlawns, which is a hospital in Polk County, basically government funded public hospital, and they severed a contract with a Christian organization that was running a coffee shop there because they found out that the Christian organization had a biblical view on marriage. So because that organization held to the Bible and held to the Bible's teachings on marriage, Broadlawns Hospital decided to cancel their contract, which I think probably violates the First Amendment. Unfortunately, that organization didn't feel like pursuing any legal remedies in that case, so I guess we'll never know. But I think that is also a case that's, again, it's one of those stories where the mainstream media didn't really want to tell it. Even when they did tell it, they didn't tell it the way we told it, and I think kind of proved why the Iowa Standard needs to exist.
Well, no, I think it's definitely been important, the work you've done to show Iowans. We sit there, a lot of us conservatives, that people just sit there and watch Fox News, and we see what's going on nationally, and we think, oh, out in New York or California, there are a bunch of crazies out there, and there's a lot of stuff going on right here at home too that we might not realize otherwise. So
yeah, there's no shortage of stuff happening in Iowa that needs conservative people to stand up and stand for kind of traditional values, I guess you could call them. I just think we have to be willing to stand up and speak out about this stuff, even though that's not to say like we're perfect. Like I'm not going to sit here and claim to be perfect. I'm not going to sit here and claim that anybody on our side is perfect, but we can stand for policies that are good for society. And they're good for society because they're good for families. You have good, strong families, you will have a good, strong society. Like that, to me, I don't know how you could deny that.
yeah, no, well, I really appreciate you. Like I said, I love the Iowa Standard. I'm a big fan. And I appreciate you coming on the show today and doing a little interview here. This has been good. If you want to kind of just direct people that if they haven't heard of the Iowa Standard or don't know where to find you, where they can find all that.
Yeah. So the website is theiowastandard.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on X. Facebook is where I'm most active. You're going to want to follow the Facebook page because that's where we live stream committee meetings too. You're going to get the most bang for your buck there. You could also sign up for our email newsletter. You could just send me your email address to jacob@theiowastandard.com. You could sign up at our website. You can find us on Twitter, Truth Social, Gab. We have our own app, The Iowa Standard. I would suggest the email newsletter, the Facebook page, and if you really care, follow us on the app. I think those three things, you're not going to miss anything if you have those three things accessible to you. But I really appreciate you inviting me on. I appreciate you obviously following along with the Iowa Standard stuff. I'm happy to be here anytime.
Well, that's all I have time for. Were you offended by this podcast? Good. Hey, thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate you all. Have a great week and stay conservative.